Welcome to The More Perfect Union, the podcast that offers real debate without the hate. I'm Kevin Kelton here in Austin, Texas, along with my good friends, Greg Matusak.
Another thing that Donald Trump and I have in common now after this week is that neither of us were invited to the Queen's funeral. So... I would not
give up on your invitation just yet.
Well, I've been waiting at my mailbox in my formal trousers, and I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, poor Donald and I are, kind of in the same boat. I have empathy for him now. I think we've both learned our lessons.
And also someone who certainly was invited to the Queen's funeral, Joe Syart, aka our friend producer Joe.
I was just listening to a little music before the show, and I think it's messed up that the music service is recommending Another One Bites the Dust by Queen. I don't think that's a timely suggestion.
Too soon.
Man, I thought that joke bombed twice as much because Greg says too soon and then Kevin's not reacting. And I'm like, oh, this is how you get the pink slip, bud.
This is what I'm going to say. Every time a joke bombs, I'm just going to say, I'm frozen.
So glad to be with you guys. Let's get right into it. A lot happening in the world this past week. The Queen of England, God rest her soul, is no longer with us. Charles is now the new King of England. And what I found interesting, something I didn't know, is that they're going to call Camilla, his wife, the Queen consort. She's not a full queen because she wasn't born to the throne. She's just a queen by marriage. Greg, that must upset you because I know what a big Camilla fan you are.
No, actually, I love that there's all these rules and regulations. I love the fact that within 24 hours of the Queen's passing, there was a secret council that met to determine whether to coronate. There was a private ceremony. It was called the Ascension Council. Did you guys know about this?
No.
I didn't hear about this.
Oh, gosh. So there was an Ascension Council, and the Ascension Council is made up of former prime ministers, and they make the proclamation. And it has to be done within 24 minutes. Former prime ministers, people who are royalty, the mayor of London proper, and stuff like that. And there's about 700 people who could be on that council at any given time. But because of the timing of it, they doubt that all 700 people would be there. And to give you an example, in 1952, only 200 people actually were for Queen Elizabeth's Ascension Council. So I love all these, I don't know, fraternity rules. I mean, I think it's kind of silly, but I think they're kind of fun that there is this kind of thing. So with that in mind, the actual coronation may not be for another year. And once I'll go back to Queen Elizabeth. Her father passed in 52, but she was not coronated until 1953. It was a year and a month, I believe. So yeah, I mean, it's all these rules and regulations. There was talk about Charles taking another name when he does ascend the throne. He could do that at 73 years old. He would get another name. It's like going to college and then saying I think I want to try Chuck out.
I think you should try Flounder.
Oh, I think that'd be awesome. D-Day. King D-Day.
Now, I got to ask you guys, because I was reading up on the Queen, but I am not familiar with this. What role do they hold? And from what I read, it's almost just it's like a president, but the whole country likes them.
No, it's ceremonial. It's not like a president. And that's why the whole country likes them. Obviously, in centuries past, the king actually ran the Commonwealth, actually ran England. Now, the prime minister runs England. There's an entire government under the prime minister. And the queen and now the king, they're pretty much just sort of like celebrities who occasionally perform some ceremonial function, like the new prime minister comes and asks their blessing to form a government, but they have no power.
They have no actual power, but because there is a portion of taxes and that pay for some of their things, they do have civic duties, ceremonies that date back hundreds and hundreds of years that they must perform. And like Kevin was saying, to the start of their Congress and things like that. Some of them are really archaic and it's fun though. I mean, it's And with Queen Elizabeth passing, the question of, does England need a royal family anymore? Probably not. I mean, we get by with the Kardashians. So,
right. One other thing that is kind of similar to the presidency here is that the Queen or now the King, they are allowed to take the highest top secret documents home and hang out with them in their home, just for the heck of it.
Yes. Yeah. They've got all the nuclear secrets. In fact, Queen Elizabeth has named most of her corgis after top secret documents.
So should we move on to the passing of somebody else who is sort of legendary or maybe infamous? Ken Starr.
Ken Starr. He was the investigator in the 90s in the Clinton trial, right, Greg?
Yes. And that's kind of a thing into itself, because for years, Ken Starr was seen as this bad guy. I mean, and even Republicans saw him as the guy who kind of goofed the Clinton investigation. I mean, he had them dead to rights on the Whitewater scandal, but instead he decided to go for the much, much sexier, much more salacious Monica Lewinsky. And eventually that kind of failed. But looking back, he was 100% right. And I think, he was the villain for much of the process. But looking back, I think he's one of those guys that history will definitely redeem, right?
Well, okay, let's agree to disagree on that one.
Really?
He had some investigative, I'll call them techniques. Like, for instance, wiring Linda Tripp to trick Monica Lewinsky into revealing that she had the blue stained dress. She had Monica's, ostensibly her best friend, wearing a wire and recording a phone call without Monica's knowledge. I guess you could say, well, the FBI does that against the mob. I'm not sure it really was the proper thing to do here.
I mean, the president wasn't doing the proper thing either. I mean,
no, nobody is apologizing for him. You said Ken Starr. He did turn out to be right. Did he turn out to be a hero? To some people, I'm sure he is.
I think in this case, I know in his later years, he went down to Baylor University and he did work for them, and there were some issues down there. But what he will always be remembered for is the Clinton investigation. And as someone who's been a Democrat for most of his life, I remember thinking Ken Starr was this bad guy. And now that it's been 25 years, 26 years, I'm thinking, I don't know. I guess he really did the right thing. So, I don't know. Ask me in another 50 years or 100 years what we think of Ken Starr.
You mean when we're doing our 9,000th episode? Okay. I wonder whether Lindsey Graham did the right thing this week. So Lindsey Graham, who's famous for being a hypocrite, is, on camera and documented and quoted years and years ago saying, when Roe versus Wade was the law of the land, he was quoted as saying he thinks it should be left to the states, that it should be the individual states' rights. Then, of course, Roe was reversed, and now Lindsey Graham is proposing that Congress pass a national law to outlaw abortions after 15 weeks.
Lindsey Graham also said that about getting Supreme Court justices, that if Trump got a Supreme Court justice in the last year of his term, he wouldn't let that go through. But of course he did. Lindsey Graham is the destiny child of Senate. He's a survivor. He will say what he has to say to get, thank you. Joe got that joke. I mean, he will say what he has to say. And he banks on the fact that no one remembers this stuff. And you can show him video footage of him saying it, and he'll say, well, the context's different, and maybe things are a different time. I was feeling a little pudgy because I had too much salt that day. And he's right. People don't care.
Have too much salt that day?
He did. He really does have to watch his salt intake. Obviously, he'll say wildly crazy things. He will say in the moment what he needs to say. And whether you call that a hypocrite or a survivor. And yeah, I know I'm one of those guys who I don't agree with almost anything he says, depending on what time it is. I'm just a huge fan of his work sometimes. I think he's a fascinating human being.
Yeah, it always seems like he's saying something to get people stirred up. And it's that type of personality that got me to look away from news for a while, because every time I read something he says, I just seem to get upset or feel a certain way about it.
Yeah, but he's like I said, he's a really interesting character. I would love to have dinner. If anyone knows his home phone number or could set up like a dinner or a lunch, or I'd have coffee with this guy because he seems really interesting. It's not like I have a man crush crush on him, but maybe I do.
And another thing in the news this week is that inflation remains stubbornly high, which has driven stocks to lows not seen since June of 2020. I ask you guys, with that in mind, does this mean that the economy is imploding, or is it just another blip that will be forgotten next week?
People look at this and say, look, it came down here, it came up here, it came down here. This is another Ken Starr moment where we are going to have to, I'm going to use that as my new phrase.
Laughing. I'm with you. It's
a Ken Starr moment. We have to look at bigger pictures than just one weekend or 2 weekends or even a month. You're right. We are on a down cycle for many things, but in many ways, we're still adding jobs to the economy. Union work is better. Shipping is getting better. And I think once the gas prices are going down, once the elections are over, you're going to see prices come down. I hope.
I will tell you that I'm seeing now gas prices where I live under $3. I saw $2.98 the other day. I'll bet they're even a little bit lower today.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm driving to Texas to get all my gas. That's amazing. I think the lowest I've seen it so far is 330, maybe.
We have a billboard. The big north-south freeway here is the I-35. Everybody travels the I-35. And when I'm heading from my town into Austin, you pass a billboard that says, Biden, buy gas from Texans, not from terrorists. That's the message on the billboard. And I laugh every time I see it because, first of all, the assumption is that Saudi Arabia and the other major gas producers are all terrorists. But it also assumes that we are not buying gasoline that is mined and refined in Texas. And that's just not the case.
I mean, at the same time, when Trump was in office, did he not buy gas from Saudi Arabia? He literally just had Saudi Arabia at his house to talk about golf tournaments and stuff like that. He had this incredible relationship with Saudi Arabia. And yeah, I mean, is the memory so short that we don't remember these things? Oh yeah, I'm never mind. Yeah, we get those billboards around here too, but not to buy. Of course he doesn't buy. Ugh, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I take it back. I'm not going to Texas to buy my gas.
Well, Greg, I'll one up you with the dumbness. One of my neighbors, 2 houses down, I noticed a flag outside their house that it's only been hanging a couple days, but it says F Biden and F you if you voted for him. And it goes full words. And I saw that go up and I'm like, geez, that's way too close to home.
If that was up in my neighborhood, luckily there's none of that. I mean, we do have, I do live in an HOA because I'm fancy, but I mean, we probably would have, I'd say, look, there's kids here. Come on. I understand your freedom of expression and, yes, it's your First Amendment. Go nuts. But come on, there's got to be a better way to express yourself in a neighborhood where there's kids or, if this is what it's come down to, you must really be pissed off.
And it's right next door to a house with a Black Lives Matter flag. So I'm kind of waiting till next summer when the cookouts come back around to see how that plays out.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I live in a classy neighborhood, so just to let you guys know where I'm at.
Hey, you know who lives in a classy neighborhood? Donald J. Trump does, and yet the DOJ subpoenaed 30 of his friends, people in the Trump circle, as it were, in this January 6th probe. So, Greg, do you have any insights into who these people are and how that affects the investigation?
Oh, everybody. I mean, it was everybody, including, I just got the thing, Mike Lindell's phone just got subpoenaed. The Department of Justice is now looking into for realsies this time, and they're subpoenaing and they're doing investigation not only to the January 6th attack, but they're into the fake election scam and into his PAC. PAC was called
My PAC.
Was it called your PAC?
Very good one.
Oh,
that was very good.
That was good. It was called the Build the Wall Fund, the Save America.
Oh, you're talking about Bannon's.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No. So after the election, Trump had this Save America PAC.
Right.
And it was to, we're going to make sure that this election gets overturned, save me money. All this money is gone. Well, it turns out none of the money actually went towards that. It didn't go towards lawyers. It pretty much went to things like golf course fees or
political campaigns, political rallies. Hey, I didn't mention this or I alluded to it, but Steve Bannon, I think he's going to jail because he was indicted on the fraud charges related to the Build the Wall fund that he and other people skimmed millions and millions of dollars out of. And I don't think they ever built, more than like 50 feet of wall. They can dance around a lot of this January 6th stuff. They can dance around some of the question as to whether those documents should have been in Trump's house. But when you defraud, a charity like that, or whatever you want to call it, to the tune of, whatever it was, to the tune of like $30 million, you're going to jail. Manafort went to jail. I think Trump's other campaign chairman, Mr. Bannon, is headed down that same path.
Oh, if you ask me, Flynn is going to go to jail. Bannon's going to go to jail. And these are a lot of guys who had the pardons before, who were like, we got lucky, we got everything. And it's still coming back. They weren't smart enough to keep their nose clean afterwards. These guys are all going to go to jail again, because stupid does as stupid does.
Yeah, I agree.
Before we leave on this subject, full disclosure, I own 2 MyPillows, so if my name pops up, that's the only reason I'm on Mike Lindell's phone.
Oh, you're off the show now. You're sorry. That should have been disclosed on day one.
I've talked many times about my weighted blanket. I didn't know I didn't get into the MyPillows. Good for the neck.
I literally have been using the same pillow for like the past 10, 12 years. It's just a terrible, disgusting pillow. It's horrible. I mean, it's most of it's dust mites at this point. I sleep on like a giant pile of dust mites. And my wife finally said, look, I'm getting you a new pillow. And I said, anything but that goddamn My Pillow thing. I said, the thought of me giving any money. And I said, in fact, I'm so paranoid at this point. I said, I need you to tell me which brands so no money goes to this guy. This
is what I want people to do, because I cannot try a My Pillow, but just on principle, I can't. But if there's a listener out there, because I have bad neck issues, and my problem is 2 pillows are too high for me, and 1 pillow is too low for me. So what I'm sleeping on these days is 1 pillow and then a little mini airplane pillow. So it's like 1.5 pillows.
Oh, you're in the same boat as I do. And so this is our health and wellness section of the show.
Yeah.
So what you have to do is, and I actually just ordered this, you have to order thin versus like a full. So I ordered 2
a thin pillow.
Thin, because they make them in different sizes.
I'll look into that. But I was going to say,
so instead of like, most people like these giant fluffy pillows, but I got like it's thin, it's nice, and I'm like, oh. And then I put 2 together, and I'm like, oh, this seems like one regular pillow. It's pillow math. Yeah.
I will look into that. But I was going to say, if one of our listeners, wants to save my neck, just buy a My Pillow, take it out of its wrapping, make sure that there are no identifying markers on it, and then just send it to me in a plain brown wrapper.
That means ego is so big, it's written all over the pillow. Yeah. It's great because the pillow starts off big on the end of the night, and then by like middle of the night, I have to change out to the other pillow. I don't think people were expecting pillow talk with the More Perfect Union podcast.
Joe, you're on fire tonight.
I try.
Ladies and gentlemen, the comedy of Joe Sire. Now that we're talking about things that you see on television, did anybody watch the Emmys?
No. Literally no one watched the Emmys. I mean,
it did have the lowest ratings in history.
Exactly.
I read the results.
Going back to when they were on radio. No, I'm only kidding about that.
Does the Emmys actually influence what you watch? Do you sit there and say, oh, well, this won an Emmy, I guess I should watch it now?
Good point.
And that's the whole point for most of these award shows. It's one thing for, I think the Oscars, like, oh, it won an Oscar, I might have to go watch it now. But most of these, the Foreign Press Correspondence Award, well, now I'm intrigued. Or, the Nickelodeon Kids Award says this has the best kiss in it. Well, I'm putting that on my must-see list.
Yeah, they never do break any news or reveal any great unheard of shows on the Emmys. Like, it wasn't news that, hey, Ted Lasso, pretty good performance there by Jason Sudeikis, pretty good show. It wasn't news that, hey, Succession, if you like drama, you should be watching it.
Yeah, and I find a lot of the stuff that I like to watch wouldn't necessarily be a winner. Like I saw
Yeah.
What We Do in Shadows lost in the comedic category, and I'm like, oh, that's a show I enjoy. I did notice that Saturday Night Live it looked like one other sketch show for best sketch show.
Yeah, and it pisses me off because I was nominated when I was there and we lost to Letterman. They don't have to go up against Letterman. Everybody loved Dave Letterman. Am I bitter? You bet I am.
So once again, who cares? I mean, who cares about an? I mean, and practically everyone has an Emmy at this point. I mean, except for Kevin. I know.
I'll admit I don't care about the Emmys, but on my other podcast, the Working Fans podcast, when I've had a guest on that has won an Emmy, I bring it up every time. One guy, he won a Canadian Emmy, and right after we did it, he goes, God, I wish you wouldn't have led with that. I was like, geez, man, like I'm going for your biggest like successes here. So maybe, I mean, I think in any artwork, greatness deserves to be recognized, but I don't know if it's as much a must-see TV show as it maybe once was.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about some other stuff. Joe, you saw a movie this week that's been out for actually several months, but it was new to you. You want to tell us about it?
I watched Elvis right before recording, and I initially told Kevin it was not the right movie to watch before you have to get on a broadcast and project some personality, because that movie is a wild ride. I loved the movie, but then when it gets to the end of his life and you see how much
Wait, no spoilers.
I know. I wanted to start off with, guys, did you know Elvis died? As you see progressively how Colonel Parker kind of controlled his life, like that just left such a sour tone in my soul as I was just watching the credits.
I have to say, I think that is the worst Tom Hanks performance in history.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was amazing, but I was wondering why his Colonel Tom Parker sounded so much like Goldmember from the Austin Powers movie.
That's why it was the worst Tom Hanks performance in history.
I don't know if it's the worst. Tom Hanks did a horror film.
He did?
Yeah, it was a slasher film inspired by Halloween, and it was called, what was it called?
Wow, inspired by Halloween. I would have believed it if it was like a student film of his.
No. It was called.
Was it Slit Throat in Seattle? Was that it?
No. I'm looking it up.
Instead of Philadelphia, it was Jewett City. That's where I live, so that's a dig at the hometown.
Was it He Knows You're Alone?
Okay.
Yeah. Well, He Knows You're Alone. And it's so bad. It is so... In 1980, that's it. So bad. It's so bad. Oh, and then after that, he did another horror film called Mazes and Monsters, which I've seen both of them because I'm that big of a Tom Hanks fan.
Okay, I'll take it back since I haven't seen either of those movies. Elvis may not be his worst performance. I stand corrected.
Yeah, it's probably his worst performance since That Thing You Do. How's that?
Oh, I love That Thing You Do. Are you kidding?
Oh, come on. He's on it for like 5 minutes. He goes, hey, kids, do that rock and roll thing. That thing you do. Oh, my gosh.
It made it easier to enjoy this movie, not knowing a ton about the Elvis story. The one thing I was mad about was them saying he shot out a TV in Vegas. I thought that occurred at his home. But other than that, I think the movies that this Baz Luhrmann makes blend the old and the new so well that it's visually and sound wise just an amazing experience. But that story, that it took me for a ride, and I wasn't expecting to get off Sadness Boulevard.
Cool.
Have you been to Graceland? Either of you guys?
I have not.
Oh, it's so worth it. My brother was shipping out to a foreign country. And so I was like, come on, get in the car. We're driving to Graceland tonight. And we drove like 10 hours to Graceland, to Memphis, saw Graceland, drove back. It's so wild to see it. And you see the jets in his backyard, and you see the jungle room, and it's so awesome. I highly recommend going.
Oh, I would do that if I get to Nashville. It's Nashville, right?
No, it's Memphis.
Memphis, thank you. I would do that if I get to Memphis. I've just never gotten there. I should have known that walking in Memphis. Greg, there was another movie you put on the docket. The movie.
Oh,
Nope.
yeah. My kids were like, hey, let's see this Nope movie. It's lots of fun. It'll be a family romp. And I was like, yeah, sure. And they turn off the lights, and halfway through, I was like, time to turn on the lights.
You didn't like it? I love that movie.
I loved it. I
thought it was Tom Hanks' best role.
I had to turn on the lights. I was scared because I don't do scary movies. And it's not your traditional scary movie. It's Jordan Peele is the director who did a lot of comedies, and now he's been doing these great horror films. And halfway through, I was even saying, there's this side story I'm not getting. I don't understand where it's coming from. And then about 3/4 of the way, everything kind of meshes. And you're like, this makes perfect sense. This is such a good film. And now it's so good. But yeah, it did scare me at a certain point.
I'll just say this. For those of you out there who haven't seen the movie but have a pet monkey, you might want to stay away from this movie.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the whole thing is just, and that's not giving away at all. That's in the opening scene. Yeah. I mean, it's really, really good. The acting, Keke Palmer is excellent. I mean, everyone is really.
Yeah, like I said, I loved it. So whatever.
Without a doubt, I can't wait for it to win an Emmy or
an Oscar.
Oh, well, I thought Emmys were bigger because
he used to be a television star, he's still allowed to win an Oscar.
Okay.
He can win an Emmy for The Twilight Zone, which he also does work on, which I've loved the remake of.
I got to see that. I meant to catch a few of those, and I haven't done that yet.
Oh, what streaming service is that on?
I bought them on Apple Plus. I think you could probably get them through Paramount, but Kevin, you have to watch the first episode called The Comedian with Kumail Nanjiani. I'd love to talk with you about that because I thought it was a deep dig into it, and
I'll definitely watch it. I won't talk to you about it.
I actually got rid of my cable this weekend.
Oh, tell us. How do you do that? I want to do that.
Yeah, so what I did was I went through and I said, what channels do we actually watch on cable? And it turns out we watched 2 channels on cable. Everything else we watch on streaming. And it turned out I did the math, and it turns out we pay well over $100 extra. So then it turns out one of the streaming networks offers a live service, and I could get
Which one channels. Is that?
Hulu.
Okay, so they offer a live service. So on that live service, you can get your local networks, the national networks, your
local networks, and a couple
CNN,
others.
MSNBC, Fox News.
Yep.
That's all I need. Yep. That's it.
And you can still get some DVR aspects to it if you want that, or it just shows up. But yeah, so I was like, done, sold. And the secret to getting rid of cable, in my opinion, take all your boxes and then take it to your cable store. Don't call, because if you call, they're going to say, really, you're not happy? Let me put you on with a man. No, you just show up with the boxes. The people at the store have no time for this. They're just like, oh, cool. Click, click, click. You're done. Awesome.
Well, actually, I have to put an asterisk on that because that works with like Time Warner and Spectrum. But my local cable service and the one that we used in Los Angeles before I moved, they would not allow you to unhook your own boxes. You had to have somebody come and take them out. Yeah.
Oh, they were so happy that I did it myself. And I even had the remote controls. And between the 3 of us, I gave them one remote control that wasn't theirs. And they were just like, cool. They were super hip about the whole thing. And they were like, done. And then we figured out the best bundle. I lost HBO, but then I got it back, and I'm still saving well over $100.
I got to look into that.
Yeah,
So it's Hulu streaming.
Hulu, yeah, so Hulu, and not that Hulu should pay us for these commercials. I figure if we say it enough time, they will eventually pay us. We did the Hulu bundle, so it's Hulu Disney, ESPN, and Live. So we got those 4. And then we also have HBO Max because we love our Venture Brothers. And then Netflix.
Okay.
Oh, and then because I have tons of Apple products, I have Apple TV, but I don't think I actually even pay for that at this point.
Wow.
I'll pay for that next year. So those are all my streaming services, I think.
Okay. I hate to throw out another service that's not sponsoring us, but my mom went from Hulu to Fubo TV, and she seems to really like that. So that could be another choice for you.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen that word. Okay. I'm writing all this down because I would like to save $100 a month.
I hope Hulu writes this down and put some money on this show. We got a lot of influence here.
Yeah, that'll happen.
I would like Hulu to start sponsoring us, and perhaps maybe a soda product of some sort.
Carvel. I want Carvel.
Carvel? What is that?
You don't know what Carvel is?
Is it
The
chocolate?
whale?
It's
Ice cream.
Yes, it's the original soft serve ice cream. Not the original. I mean, there was soft serve before them, but
that's too classy for Cincinnati. We do graters. It's just a little nicer. But
last show that we wanted to bring up, somebody's been watching or is looking forward to the new season of Atlanta. Who was that?
No, it's the last season. The new season is coming up next week. I finished watching the last season, Donald Glover's Jam. The whole episode is not necessarily. Each episode is not necessarily connected with the other episodes. And
they're standalone.
And some of them are really kind of blatant and obvious. There's an episode like, what if reparations happen tomorrow? And there's all these black people saying, hey, your great-grandfather owed my great-grandfather. You personally owe me $2 million. And, the reparations, the repercussions of these things. And it's awesome. It's great. There's another standalone where you see these very upwardly mobile, affluent couples whose kids are being taken care of by minorities. And they don't communicate at all with their children. And these children, however, know the folk tales and the songs of these minorities. And they speak in these terms. And they're wondering how close do they know their children and what is their children's identity now? And they're just like, oh my gosh. And it's awesome. It's a really interesting look at race and in America, but this season took place in Europe. So it's even more interesting. I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite shows. It's not everyone's bag of tea, but it should be.
Interesting. Well, with that, anything else that we need to cover, or should we wrap things up?
Yeah, I got to get to bed.
Me too. Oh
my gosh.
It's almost 5:30 p.m. here.
I know. I've already had dinner.
Wow, I'm the only one with time on my hands here. As Greg gets into the busier season at work, I'm coming out of the busy season into the slower season. So I got time to edit tonight, fellas.
Yeah, and that's why we love you. That's one of the reasons why we love you. So with that, we want to thank everybody for listening. If you like what we do, please put our link on your Facebook timeline so your friends can discover us as well. And with that, Joe, Greg, any final thoughts for the week ahead?
I'm going to continue waiting for my invitation, and maybe I'll write down a couple more suggestions for the new king. Perhaps like Chuckwagon, King Chuckwagon, or Chuckmeister. We're workshopping. We'll figure out something to bring honor and prestige to the crown again.
If he goes for King Joseph Charles III, I'm coming for him.